Hey team, agreeing to stay here. Just thought I'd do a quick follow-up video after yesterday. Talking about, if the governments, in particular the government here in Australia, has so much power to make strong governmental decisions like closing borders, stopping flights, banning travel, making people wear masks. There's a lot of things that they seem to have, not just Australia, but a lot of governments have done, which showed they could come out of their impotency when they want to. So just following up on that, I said, well, if they can do all these things, they can exercise this great power and authority to do all these things. Okay, why can't they exercise some insight, some creativity, imagination into making the system fairer, instead of just saying, look, this is the system, just batten down the hatches until this pandemic ends, and then we'll just go back to normal. I just don't get it. I mean, if you've been through this gigantic economic crisis and you aren't learning from it, you aren't trying to change the living conditions for everyone, then what's the point? If you want to just go back to normal, and I suppose there's a lot of people in Australia that probably think that everything's working all right. Why should we change it? Well, I get that, but the system that we're living under is failing. I mean, it was failing before this pandemic, and if we just go back to the same methods, then it'll just start to fail again. Primarily, what am I talking about here? Well, I've been thinking, and I think it's primarily the way that people have to work to own a house or real estate or property. That's primarily what's driving the system. Now, a couple of points about that. It's very expensive to own a house where I currently are residing in Sydney, so there's a lot of pressure there. But something happened over the last, say, 20 years, from when I was young and my contemporaries to the last, say, 10-15 years. The price of real estate just went astronomical, and my generation seems to be quite comfortable with that, because a lot of my generation inherited property from their parents. They only had to put a small deposit down and they could own a house, but their children are going to have to deal with this massive cost of owning property and buying property. Okay, so maybe there's a bit of strategy there in not speeding up things to allow people to buy property. But I also have an issue with the fact that, along those lines, that the fact that in Australia we've had so many royal commissions, and you'll get what I mean when I explain this. We've had so many so-called royal commissions or inquiries into certain subjects. We've had royal commissions into black or Indigenous people in custody. We've had royal commissions into the banking and finance sector. We've had royal commissions into child abuse in the building industry, aged care. We've had so many royal commissions. But what I'm talking about now is primarily the Royal Commission into the banking and finance sector, which just uncovered a massive amount of corruption and theft, basically, of the public. And my issue with the government is that they seem to be quite happy to just allow that situation to go back, where banks make ridiculous profits. It's not just the profit, but the fact that they broke laws. They broke all sorts of laws. Money was being laundered from different sources, from illegal, corrupt sources, and the government here, our Conservative, actually I don't know what they are, I don't know what they or who they represent, or what they stand on. I don't think they stand on anything. But they're quite happy just to allow the banking sector to continue making enormous profits, while everyone has to slug it out for to pay for the roof over their heads. So what I'm trying to say here is that how could they make things easier? Well, they could introduce ways that could level the playing field. They could you know, if they seem so interested in banking, we could have like a public bank. We could have it run from the post office, and that would level the playing field and stop the banks here from having a monopoly, and just other things too, diversifying the economy in a way. Instead of being a follower in sustainability, like being a leader. And I know there's a lot of people in the country that do support this, and I'm not having a go at that. There's probably much more enthusiasm than I probably know of for that sustainability economy. But we need government legislation, because this attracts serious investment and shows a commitment. Okay, that's what we need, to be considered a rural leader in sustainability, in green commerce, green investment. We need serious government legislation, and Australia's got a lot of room for growth in that area. So I think it's inevitable that it's going to happen, but I'd just like to see someone take a rural leadership instead of this hang back attitude. And well, that's one area. So they could level the playing field as far as buying a house, lending money, not so dependent on the central banks. Just lots of things, you know. I'm quite surprised that there's not more of an acceptance that that everybody wants to move to a new type of currency. Is that selective deafness or something? Because the people they're crying out that they want a fair exchange of currency. That's why all this Bitcoin has exploded and all this sort of thing. Why isn't the government taking some initiative in that area? Singapore, for example, is encouraging green bonds. So why can't Australia do something like that? Anyway, so that's just one area. I can think of lots of others, but we'll just leave it at that. Anyway, I've nearly gone for 10 minutes again. So if you got any thoughts about how we can make this this economy fairer, just a couple of things quickly. Like, for example, if we weren't working as hard to pay off property and rents and mortgages and things like that, we could have a new type of economy where people could be involved in their own interests or hobbies. All you need to do is, like as we've seen, is build a website and, you know, get involved in e-commerce in some way. Why can't they make the postal service more acute to an e-commerce economy? That's one example. That's just a simple one off the top of my head. Everyone could be encouraged to have a website and a platform where they could get involved in whatever kind of initiative that they're interested in. They could do that maybe two days a week. They could do their normal job. Why do we have this government? Why do we have this system that just insists that everyone has to work 5-6 days a week? And that's one thing, but it's just the lack of acknowledgement by the media and the government, just to acknowledge that there's issues, you know. I can't understand it, you know. It's like their minds have been held captive to some kind of force, and if you know, it's like when I talk about these things, it's like I'm speaking another language, and I just don't get it. The silence is deafening, you know. As Rage Against the Machine said, silence makes me sick, you know. Silence, that sort of silence is evil. And yeah, it makes me a little bit paranoid that, you know, what are the people so fearful? You know, they celebrate Anzac Day, they celebrate all this freedom that they supposedly have, and none of them talk about these things, like, you know, as if they're not qualified, or they're not, you know, they're not permitted to talk about these things. What is this? What is it with this Australian silence at the moment? This deafening silence about acknowledging things, about how much better things could be in the future for this country. The opportunities for this country are like limitless, yet there's this deafening silence. Anyway, maybe you could, hello dog, maybe you could got some thoughts there yourself, and you could leave some comments. I'll just leave it at that. I've gone over my 10 minutes, but that's all right. It's very important. Okay, thanks team. This is Green to Stay, and signing out.